Emma and I were always drawn to places with dark histories, the kind most people avoid. So when we planned our trip to Japan, visiting Aokigahara, the infamous suicide forest, was a must. We joked about it over coffee, scrolling through eerie photos and half believing the ghost stories that swirled around this place. It was all fun and games then. Now, I would give anything to undo that decision. We arrived at the forest's edge early, the morning mist still clinging to the ground. The dense canopy overhead filtered the sunlight into strange patterns, making everything feel distant and unreal. The forest seemed peaceful enough at first glance, almost inviting. Emma smirked as we passed a sign in both Japanese and English warning visitors against venturing off the trails, a grim reminder that many who enter never leave. "They put these signs up to scare tourists, I bet," Emma said, her tone teasing, though I could sense a slight tremor beneath her words. "Yeah, maybe," I replied, my gaze drifting to the darkened path ahead. I forced a smile, trying to match her bravado, but I couldn't shake the tightness in my chest. "Stick close, okay?" She laughed. "What? You're worried a ghost is going to snatch me up?" I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't help smiling. "Just don't wander off, Emma. This place is different." We moved deeper into the forest, following the winding trails. At first, it was just us, our footsteps crunching over the old volcanic rock, the occasional bird chirping overhead. But then the air began to change. It felt thicker, heavier, as if the forest was breathing. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Emma seemed less chatty, her steps slower, more deliberate. We came across a series of faint red stains on the ground, leading down further the main path. Emma stopped, her eyes narrowing. "Do you see that? Probably from an animal," I said, though my voice came out smaller than I intended. "Looks fresh. What if it's hurt? Oh, what if someone is hurt?" Her brow furrowed. Before I could stop her, she was already moving forward, her feet crunching leaves as she ventured down the trail, following another trail to the right. "Emma, wait," I called, but she kept going, ignoring my warning. That's when I saw him, a man standing motionless among the trees, just beyond where Emma was headed. His head lolled to one side, his neck bent at an impossible angle, as if it had been snapped like a twig. His eyes were sunken, dark, his skin pallid and stretched too tight over his bones. My breath caught in my throat. I grabbed Emma's arm, yanking her back, but she barely noticed. "Who is that?" she whispered, as if afraid her voice might shatter him. "I don't know. Let's just go," I urged, tugging her, but she wouldn't move. The man began to step forward, moving with a jerky, unnatural gait, and that's when I saw her, a woman following behind him, crawling on all fours like a spider, her limbs twisted and broken in horrifying directions. Her face was a nightmare. Her lower jaw was missing, the back of her head caved in, but her eyes were wide, almost eager. "Emma, run!" I shouted, panic tightening my throat. We turned and sprinted back the way we came, but the forest seemed different now, the paths twisting, closing in on us. The woman's deformed body scrambled over rocks and roots with alarming speed, moving like a crab, her limbs clicking and snapping as she closed the distance between us. Her ragged breaths filled the air with a sick, wheezing sound. "Faster, Emma!" I screamed, my legs burning with effort. Emma stumbled, nearly falling, but I grabbed her arm and pulled her up. "Go, go!" I yelled, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. The woman was close now, her fingers, or what was left of them, scraping at the dirt, leaving a trail of blood in her wake. I could hear her laughing, a sound like broken glass grinding together. I risked a glance back and saw her face contorted in a grotesque grin, her eyes gleaming with some hideous glee. We burst into a small clearing, panting, and I dared to hope that maybe we'd lost her, that we might be safe. But the man with the broken neck appeared before us, blocking our path, his head twitching as if in silent laughter. Emma screamed as his hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with impossible strength. "Let go!" I shrieked, grabbing a branch and swinging it wildly. He didn't even flinch. His grip tightened, dragging Emma towards him. The woman with the shattered limbs was upon us now, her jawless mouth opening wide, not unlike a python preparing for a meal. She lunged at Emma's legs, her fingers digging in with a sickening crunch. "Help me!" Emma cried, terror in her eyes as they began to pull her away back into the dark. I reached for her, but something held me back. A hand, cold and clammy, wrapped around my ankle. I kicked, struggling, and broke free, watching in horror as Emma was dragged deeper into the forest, the two figures tearing at her clothes, pulling her by her hair, her terrified screams fading into the shadows. "No!" I shouted, racing after her, but I felt the ground give way, my feet slipping over loose dirt. I crashed to my knees, pain exploding through my body. The woman with the broken limbs began crawling toward me again, her body twisting and contorting in ways that defied reason. I scrambled back, my breath coming in frantic gasps, my heart hammering in my chest. I could hear them dragging Emma, hear her cries, and then nothing. Only the sound of leaves rustling, the distant creak of branches. I don't remember how I got out. The next thing I knew, I was in the back of an ambulance, shivering, covered in dirt and scratches. They kept asking me what happened and where my sister was, but I couldn't form the words. All I could do was stare back at the trees. And then I saw her, Emma, standing at the edge of the forest, her body pale and gaunt. She was waving at me, a slow, lifeless motion. Her chest had a gaping hole where her heart should have been, her face blank. I lost consciousness before the ambulance doors closed, but I couldn't unsee it, her hollow, dead eyes locked onto mine, forever calling me back into the darkness. So please, I beg of you, stay out of the suicide forest.